Joining us now on the line, Mr. Stephen Moore. He's a writer, economist, former Trump advisor, and knows all things about taxes and regulation and fiscal policy. Good afternoon, Stephen. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for having me. A pleasure.
You bet. So I'll have to just disclose that I've followed you for a long time. I've watched numerous interviews, particularly on the Business Channel. And have read your op-eds, those published in the Wall Street Journal. I believe you used to be a member of the editorial board.
I was, for 10 years.
Absolutely. And just wanted to convey that I'm not sure I've ever disagreed with you, and that doesn't happen a lot. But
there's a but here. I know there's a but coming.
No, not at all. I especially enjoy the split screen debates with Austin Goolsbee.
Well, Austin doesn't often get it right. He's a friend of mine, but he's got a liberal persuasion, and I try to persuade him every week of the righteousness of free enterprise and free markets and liberty, but it's an uphill climb. But thank you for saying that. It's nice to know people are watching. And by the way, I want to let you know and your audience know that every morning I put out what I call the Prosperity Hotline, which is 7 or 8 items that I don't know if you've been getting it. If you're not, I'd love to get it to you. It's free. It's very popular. I write it with my friend John Fund, who I got to know at the Wall Street Journal. We worked together there, and it's a nice way. Newt Gingrich called me the other day and said, this is the first thing I like to read every morning. And so if anybody wants to get that, it's a conservative, I'll warn people, it's of a conservative bent. So if you're a conservative and have a free market disposition, you might want to get this. It's a nice way to argue with your liberal friends. And you just go to committee-to-unleash-prosperity.com, Committee to Unleash Prosperity, and just, it's free. It's free. So some things in life are free, and we're happy to send it out to you.
Yeah, I just signed up. Good. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's awesome. So, Stephen, obviously we have taken an abrupt turn in the other direction from your time serving President Trump. And it just seems like we're back to this idea that government has to solve all problems, or can and will solve all problems. And they'll do it by just taking from one class of citizens and reallocating it through another class, or to another class, through this series of government, I like to say, quote, programs, unquote.
Yes.
How did we get here? Well, I mean, it's just like overnight because of this change, I guess, after the election.
Good question. How do we get here? I'd warned people that, Joe Biden, because I even have relatives that voted for Biden. They didn't necessarily like Donald Trump's behavior, even though they liked his economic policies. They didn't like some of the things that he said, or some of his actions. And so, and Joe Biden, remember when he was running for president, he kept saying, I'm going to be lunch bucket Joe. I'm not going to be, Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. I'm going to be, a middle-of-the-road Democrat. And, I told people, if you think that's what you're getting, you're crazy, because the left has really taken over the Democratic Party in Washington. And now we're seeing I've never seen anything like it. I was laughing when you said things have gone in a different direction. That's the understatement of the century. We had free markets, we had free enterprise, we had lower taxes, less regulation. For the first time, you're there in Mississippi, which is one of the Gulf states, for the first time in your and my lifetime, in January of this past year, right before Trump left office, we imported zero oil from Saudi Arabia. Zero.
Right.
It was a miracle, and that's because we were producing so much oil and gas here. And in fact, the reason I was a minute or two late for your show this morning is because I was watching a little bit of this, press conference the White House was having, and now they're saying they're going to try to shut down our oil and gas development in this country. I don't understand the logic of it, but it is imperative that we as conservatives try to stop this. They're doing a lot of it with only 50 votes in the Senate.
Yep.
And as the vice president breaks the tie, and they only have a 5 or 6 majority in the House out of 435. That's a pretty slim margin. But they are all, those films of the, South Korean or the North Korean army. They show them all the time. They're marching like robots in front of President Kim. That's the Democrats today. They're just like,
it's unbelievable.
And we can't stop them. And I'm really pleased. By the way, I'm going to try to come to Jackson in the next month or so, because we've got to get. I love this idea of getting rid of the income tax in Mississippi. I mean, how great would that be? I mean, you talk about a stimulus to your economy. And you know this because you read my stuff, and and there are 9 states today that don't have an income tax, including Texas and Florida and Tennessee, and those states are just booming with activity. So I'm going to do whatever I can to help Mississippi become the 10th state in the union without an income tax.
Wow. So, Stephen, have you reviewed the plan in its specifics? There are some folks in our state that object to the idea of raising sales taxes by a slight percentage to cover revenue. Just transition more to a consumption tax model away from an income tax model. Your thoughts about that?
I think that's exactly the way to go. Now, that's what, if you look at the states like Texas and Tennessee and Florida, which I think should be your models.
Right.
And those are the three of the fastest growing states. They have slightly higher sales taxes, but then, think of it, folks, just in terms of the simplicity of your life. If you don't have to fill out all those tax forms, and you just pay your tax. How simple is it? You just, when you go to the cash register, or you go to the 7-Eleven, or you go to the grocery store, whatever it is, you pay your sales tax. But then you don't have to, the state IRS doesn't have to know how much money you make. You don't have to keep all your financial records for the state auditors and that kind of thing. It just makes it so much simpler. And you're not taxing your small businesses. You're not taxing your companies. The more a person works, they don't have to pay income tax on that. So it's an incentive to get more businesses in your state, more jobs in your state. Let's face it, Mississippi is one of our poorest states.
Right.
But I think if you put this in place, I think Mississippi could be, a real growth state over the next decade. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
It'd be fantastic. It also, of course, Art Laffer supports the concept as well, as you can imagine. And I know that for the benefit of our listeners, our audience, you and Mr. Laffer corroborated on a book, Trumponomics.
We did.
And have read a good bit of that and have followed Art, of course, as well. He's famous for the Laffer curve, which, of course, is like dynamite, is it not, to Democrats? They just completely don't buy into those concepts.
They don't. And then, what we're going to do is, Arthur and I are going to come to Jackson, and we're going to make the case. And when we come, we want to come into your studio. We want to spend an hour with you on the radio, explaining to everybody why this is so great for the economy. It's been great, and you've got one of the top radio shows in Mississippi, so it's an honor to be on your show. And we want to look. This would be fantastic for Mississippi. It's like, what you're doing? You're taking a neon sign on the highways, and you're saying Mississippi is open for business.
So true.
We need this. We need this to counteract all these insane tax increases that Washington is putting in place. I mean, my God, they want to raise the capital gains tax, the income tax, the energy taxes, the death tax. They want to take the death tax to 45%. So half of my dad built up a business, spent his whole life putting his sweat and equity in that business, and then the government's going to take half of it away when he dies?
Well,
that's insane.
It's terrible. And I tell you something else, Steve, that I've discussed here on the air. To an entrepreneur that spent their life building a business with respect to the capital gains tax, in that particular year, that maybe they sell that business, they monetize that asset because it just makes sense to do so. Well, in that particular year, they eclipse that $1 million threshold, and they got to pay the government half of what they spent their life building.
Yeah, and by the way, if anything, you've understated it, because I'm sure you know this, but first you have to pay the taxes, each year, and then when you sell the business, we take a capital gains on it. And then if you die with those assets, they tax you again. So it's like, you could pay 70-80% tax. Nobody's going to invest in small businesses. Why would you do it?
You wouldn't.
The government's going to take, like my son recently started a business, and, he needs a couple $100,000 of startup capital to get that business off the ground. And we, as typically happens, friends and family put that first round of money into the business. And we're doing it, A, because we love our son and believe in him, but B, you know, I'm thinking, gee, if this business really takes off, I'm going to get rich.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing wrong with getting rich, you know. But then I think, geez, you know, okay, now all of a sudden, you know, this business succeeds because 2 out of 3 small businesses fail.
Right.
So maybe this is going to be one of the 3 that's, and by the way, I've run businesses that have failed. There's nothing, you know, as my mom used to say, there's nothing wrong with failing. There's a lot of wrong with not trying, right? Not trying.